watching World Championship Wreckage, brought to you by Rivet City Radio and the World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. Today's episode, Bash at the Beach 96. And what if I were to tell you the industry was going to change this very night? Not from the leg drop heard around the world, but I will tell you it's the reason why we have a 3-man announce team to this very day.
We've got trash everywhere.
That's where you got the lid from, the top of the can.
And there was trash in them cans. Yeah, there was. Now there's an inner tube come into play. A life preserver. Yes, an inner a plunder is plunder. I told you guys, these guys.
Let's bliv it off the top.
It's going to be more than a bliv it off the top. That's a rubber shark.
A man just beat him with a rubber shark.
He's beating a man with a rubber shark.
An inflatable rubber shark.
Remember this one. We've seen a first here.
He's going to bury him in the sand like a cat does.
Yes.
Something tells me these four don't like each other.
They never do. This thing. Wonder what that is, Brain. Going to seriously injure a man here, but this is what it's all about.
Oh! It's the toughest table I've ever seen.
Boy,
he's going back up to the lifeguard perch again.
What's amazing is the lifeguard perch is still standing.
Yeah.
It was still standing. Well, just as soon as you talk, it ain't standing. It ain't standing no more.
You know what I mean? They're going to have sand where they didn't think they could get sand tomorrow.
Well, believe you me, when you go to the beach, you always do.
Do what?
Get sand? Nothing. That was a mess.
What a mess.
That was a mess.
That was the greatest Greco-Roman power match I've ever seen.
He's beating a man with a rubber shark.
It'll look like none of this ever happened.
Or he'll leave it. Or he'll leave it in.
Or he'll leave it just to prove a point.
Yeah. Welcome, everybody. And we are going to the beach tonight. That's right. I got my shades, got my cut-off shirt. Didn't have time to get a little umbrella, but I got me a drink. So welcome to World Championship Wreckage. As always, I am your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan, joined by me, as in every week, the Clyde to my Sonny, the Kevin Nash to my Scott Hall, from Botch and Share Shots over at Rivet City Radio, the Will Gray. Will, what's up, buddy?
Man, I'm so glad you're back. How was your vacation?
It was hot.
It was Florida, and you took 2 young kids under the age of 5.
Yes.
That's intense. That's super intense.
Heat index of 115, like 2 days in a row. Like, it was, like, even inside, like, where air conditioning was, it was hot. But, yeah, you get used to it. And then when I come back to North Carolina, and, like, this week, it's been, like, 99 and 100 every day. I'm like, oh, this is, it's hot, but I did work last week.
Completely unbearable hot.
Yeah. But it's not like I'm outside, like, mowing the yard or running a marathon or something in this heat. It's like, okay, it's hot. I must keep my butt inside. So, but yeah, I missed you. I missed doing the show.
But here we are. We're back. And we're talking about one of the biggest nights in wrestling history, the Nasty Boys versus Public Enemy.
The rubber shark, baby. The table that wouldn't break.
That would table. You talk about things not selling in pro wrestling in 2023. That table did not sell a thing. That table wouldn't sell nothing.
Nothing. Like, I hope they burn that table to the ground backstage at the end of the show. Like,
that was a trooper, dude. That's like the Dudley Boys' worst nightmare.
Yeah. Like, I could just see literally, like, just seeing Bubba Ray Dudley just cussing that table out.
Just losing his freaking mind.
Losing his mind. But yeah, so let's let everybody. So you said don't call it a comeback. You're catching up.
7-10. Whew. It's close. We're getting there.
You're getting there. You're catching up. You are catching up. Our poll for next week, which is either going to be Dean Malenko or Raven, ends, I believe, tomorrow night. So we'll find out about that. Don't want to get your hopes up. Like the first several days of that, it was literally like I almost wanted to text you while I was in Florida and be like, "Do you want to call a mercy rule?" Like that's what it was looking like.
Oh no, it was intense. I saw right away that it was going to be a landslide, but when you called it, I knew it would be.
Yeah.
So.
But I'm looking forward to that, and hopefully I can make some magic happen with some contact information that I got yesterday. So if I can make some magic happen, that's gonna be awesome.
Yes,
For that episode. But Will won the topic this week, so he's going to be leading the discussion. We're going to be talking about, and I know we're going to get into the main event, which we've already done an episode with the Hall Nash invasion and what led up to Bash at the Beach 96, but we're going to take a deep dive into the entire pay-per-view as a whole. And I honestly think this might be the first time I've ever watched this whole thing from start to finish.
It's a watch, man. I forgot, and one of the things we'll talk about is it's not that there's a lot of matches. There's 8, 9 on the main card, and then there were like 5 dark matches on main event before, which we didn't watch because thank God this would be a 4-hour-long pay-per-view. It was an hour of dark matches, then main event, then the pay-per-view. The people in the stands had to have been there for 5 or 6 hours straight watching wrestling by the time it was all said and done.
Yeah.
Ridiculous amount of time to be sitting there to watch the live show.
I mean, we say that now, but I mean, look at Manias of years past before they went to 2 nights, and it was literally like a 14, 15-hour extravaganza. We were watching everything.
The nice thing about this, though, was constant in-ring action almost.
Yeah.
Very little cuts to backstage. The vignettes were very minimal. They kept the action very high focus, high intensity, and they started with a fucking ridiculous match. Rey Mysterio and Psychosis. Coming into it, we know the build. It's all the way been around. In 96, you're looking at when Rey was just starting to come up, really start building into that cruiserweight title, seeing the cruiserweight titles around Dean Malenko's waist at this point. So there's a lot going on in that division. Technical showcase early, Lucha Libre at its best, because these two guys came over from CMLL and AAA and all of that nonsense. The Rey Mysterio half mask, where it was just covering his face but not the back of his head.
Yeah.
I thought that was super cool.
I didn't remember him doing that in WCW. When I saw it, I was like, okay.
That looked like a WWE Rey mask.
Yeah, I was like, I don't remember him doing that.
What did you think about the Rey Psychosis match?
Oh, I mean, those two together are perfect. I mean, it goes back into ECW. I mean, it goes back further than that. But I mean, for, easily accessible to see, ECW is going to be the start of it. Even going all the way up into ECW One Night Stand. That's what they brought back with Psychosis and Rey. It's great. One cool spot that you catch is Psychosis does its Scorpion Death Drop before the Scorpion Death Drop was a thing. I spotted that, of course, because me and my love for Sting. I was like, Sting sitting in the back going, but they're not really popular. I can take this, at the time. But it was great. I mean, the weird thing looking back on this is when you've got, of course, back then we didn't pay attention to it much because it was new to us too. But watching it now, the commentary bothers me. Like Mike Tenay sounds super intelligent as he always is, but then you've got Bobby Heenan who literally is just playing dumb and making fun of all these names and moves and everything, and that just bothers me. I don't know if I've said this yet on any of our podcasts, but going back and watching these, it's making me not like Heenan as a commentator.
It's definitely a mixed bag. Some of his stuff very similar to kind of like Jerry Lawler, I feel. Some of his stuff didn't age well. The Heenan family as a manager we've talked about his role.
That's beautiful.
That's totally different than him as a commentator. But looking back at his work as a commentator, I know there were times where him and Zbyszko were in the booth together for Thunder and stuff. And he started doing weird things where he wouldn't want to know the winners of matches. So that way, he could react raw. It would just be pure emotion and stuff. And it got weird, it wasn't his best showing. He wasn't best known for commentary work.
Yeah. Well, I mean, with this match, it just makes him sound like he's just I'm just going to throw a one-liner out there. And to me, it almost demeans the match and the performers in the ring. It's he's not taking it seriously. He's who cares about these two? I can talk about whatever. I can start talking about the sand on the beach today, and that's what I don't know. Tenay sounds great, and I was always a big Mike Tenay fan. But it almost it's they're making fun of Tenay because Tenay knows all this stuff about these different, these different worlds.
He's an
of pro wrestling.
educated man,
Yeah.
so they're making fun of him for being a smart mark ultimately.
Yeah.
The finish in this match is one of the, I don't know how to word this right. It's one of the few finishes that didn't finish semi-screwy. You know what I mean? Where there's some interference or somebody finished dirty. And it was really reminiscent to the finish that happens at Halloween Havoc 97 between Ray and Eddie, because it's the Hurricane Karana counter into the double leg pin, and he pins him down, knees to shoulders for the win. Super reminiscent of that finish before Eddie and him run it in a couple of years.
It was weird that they kept being like, Ray's a big fan of Scott Steiner. Ray's a big fan of Scott Steiner. It's like we have to justify the fact that he's using what, Scott Steiner's called the Frankensteiner for a while, and Ray's doing the Hurricane Rana. Like, I was just like,
before the guys got the Lucha Invasion in that 94 range, like he was the only person in America doing it. And he stole it from Japan. Let's call it what it is. He saw the guys in Japan doing it and brought it home. Second match on the card. I'm going to pound through a lot of these because we both know the main event is what's the most important of this pay-per-view.
The meat on the bone. Yeah.
Yeah. Carson City Silver Dollar match. For those of you who aren't aware or don't remember it, ultimately a stack of silver dollars in a sock tied to a pole that was very lightly rigged to the post. It wasn't like they used bungee cords, but it looks like somebody was like, shit, we forgot how to do this. Get the little ratchet straps out of your truck, Jimbo. And that's what it looked like they did. It didn't look like, it was very shoddily rigged up to the ring.
Yeah. And if you need a little background on this, our producer, our buddy, Jay Knows Wrestling, covered this partially with creative character writing when he covered John Tenta. So there's a little bit about that background. So go on the channel, find that creative character writing for John Tenta. You'll get a little more information. But yeah, this happened.
John Tenta, Big Bubba. For those of you who are like, why do I think I know those names? Oh, you do, because it's Earthquake and Big Boss Man, but they're in WCW. And we got John Tenta and Big Bubba. It seems kind of screwy, like the turn at the end with Tenta. He wins because he gets the coins from Jimmy Hart, and he just bashes him with it to get the count.
Because when you hear Earthquake and Big Boss Man, you think those boys are going to climb a pole.
Yeah, this is one of those what classically overbooked WCW matches, and I say that, and we haven't got to the Nasty Boys match yet. Yeah. But there were 3 consecutive gimmick matches on this card, and I think it was just. This wasn't before they started really overbooking hard in WCW, but it was like the foreshadowing of what was to come in 3 or 4 years, because I felt like they didn't need a gimmick match for every match, and they did, because the third one was a taped fist match. I completely forgot about this until the end. Page wins over Duggan with a wild, crazy diamond cutter. The bulldog counter on the outside from the suplex, super cool spot. This is the end, where you see at the end of the match, though, Hacksaw Jim Duggan, or just Jim Duggan at this point rather, has his wrist and his fists are untaped, and he wraps the tape around his fist, and he walks up and just throws the most ridiculous haymaker ever.
It's let me do this, and then I'm gonna wind up and.
Yeah, it was like the most over-the-top worked punch ever, and it's a meme 1,000 times over.
Oh, yeah.
What'd you think about your boy DDP and Hacksaw Jim Duggan?
I mean, this is still before DDP is...
Really DDP?
This is gimmick. He's almost done with all the gimmicks. He only has the cigar. But, I mean, it's... I don't know. As much as I love Diamond Dallas Page, it's hard for me pre-97 to take Page seriously, as much as I love him. But I mean, he was trying to figure out who he was and in this world. So, because he was still so green on that side of things. But I mean, I agree with you. Like the gimmick match after gimmick match after gimmick match, like the John Tenta and Big Bubba. I was just like, pole match these two, because that
Yeah.
makes sense.
Just not overbooked, but like borderline right to the limit
Yeah.
of being overbooked. You know what
Yeah.
I mean?
Yeah. And was the tape fist one next, or was that the dog collar match? Was that in
It was
between
the tape fist match. Then it was the trainer
Okay.
dog collar match, not
The
the
tape
trainer.
fist match? I'm just like, WCW had this way of doing it. Like every match had to have a tagline, and it's
Mhm.
on one of the Trons as they walk out, like the tape fist match, the diamond or the battle bowl, or the battle for the battle bowl ring, like on a different pay per view, or like the dog collar street fight. Like it has every like that's one thing looking back on WCW that bugs the crap out of me.
Everything was a gimmick to them.
Yeah,
Everything had to be the work of a work.
yeah, can't just be a great match.
No. And that's what was disappointing, was because they had so much talent at the time that could have been just a great match.
Yeah.
We talk about it a lot, the difference between Thunder and Nitro, especially after this pay-per-view, when they kind of start going into the NWO, and it's like Mondays the entertainment side and Thursdays the pro wrestling side.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, it is like you got the Carson City Silver Dollar match, DadHat, and then we got the taped fist match.
Jim Duggan at this point. It's
But
just so funny.
then, my friend, then we got the double dog collar street fight between the Nasty Boys and Public Enemy. And if you watch the intro, there's really only two things that happen in this pay-per-view: this match and the main event.
Absolutely.
It's a double dog collar match. If you guys have ever watched AEW and you haven't gone back to watch Bash yet, and you're like, man, these guys did so good, I'm going to rewatch the pay-per-view now. When you go back and watch, think of the double dog collar match the way you would watch, like, you remember in the best of 7 trios titles run in AEW between Death Triangle and the Elite, and it was like, I think they legitimately did everything in that match you could possibly do.
Yeah.
This was that match.
Yeah, yeah. They wanted to make sure they covered every space they could get to, touch every prop, every piece of sand. I mean, they're like, a inflatable shark. I'm going to use that. Okay. A beach towel. We're going to use that.
Can you imagine how just nasty the locker room was after that? By that point, after Benoit takes the big bump on the outside in the sand, the whole rest of the match, he's wandering around and it's just like dusting sand. Not Benoit. No, not Benoit. Sorry. That happened in the Benoit match. What was it? Which one of the Nasty Boys was it that took the bump? It was when with the lifeguard thing.
Mm-hmm.
Tipped over and everything, and they went rolling through the sand, and you saw it was just freaking everywhere. Like, but it comes up later too with some of the other guys. But like, can you just imagine how filthy the locker room was with all of these guys just walking around dropping sand everywhere they go?
And it's a precursor too. I mean, this is 96, so like ECW has some rumblings. Like you had to hunt for it, or up in the middle of the night, like, it might stumble across your TV, but with tape trading. But I mean, it was a rumbling at this point. Like it wasn't mainstream yet. So of course, Public Enemy coming from that world and everything, bringing it to WCW, this is just the start of like quote unquote hardcore being somewhat mainstream. And it fits with both of these tag teams. Like it fits the Nasty Boys perfectly.
Brad Knobs.
I mean,
I don't know why I couldn't remember his name a second ago.
It covers their weaknesses. Like they're not great in-ring technicians. They can fight.
Just going off a rail, just because, do you think the guys who work the hardcore and deathmatch wrestlings work that style because they're not as technically sound? Do you think John Moxley leans on that stuff because he doesn't have the in-ring prowess of a Bryan Danielson?
No, like not Yes and no. I think that certain wrestlers definitely use it because they know they're not at that level. But if you're looking at a Moxley Danielson, I could see Moxley hanging in there with Danielson for a 60-minute Iron Man match. Like, I could see that. He'll probably bleed in the first 3 seconds, but that's just being comical because it's John Moxley and he bleeds all the time. But he's talented enough in the ring where he could do that. But I mean, you hear about I'll throw out something they wrestled with Bruce Pritchard. He would talk about in certain matches the reason why they and everything is it's literally we throw out those gimmicks, anything to hide the fact that they're not the best in the ring. Like you're not seeing the nasty look at the Nasty Boys. The Nasty Boys have had some great rivalries. I mean, Harlem Heat. They were WWF Tag Team Champions. They were WCW Tag Team Champions. Like they're a tag team that people remember from this era as being a big deal. But they're not throwing out, classics.
Yeah.
They're not like if I go, okay, Will, best number one all time Nasty Boys match other than this. What one you're throwing out, right? There's not like you're like, yeah.
They're that we talk a lot. We've talked about how important the mid card is. I say a ton. Without the mid card, you wouldn't have a main event. That's why it's important. And you talk about your main event tag teams that came up through the 80s and the 90s, your rock and rolls and your midnights and your LODs, your Four Horsemen and your Steiners and everybody that came through. The Nasty Boys were kind of like that mid-card tag team that got some title runs, but they were never like that full-time main event picture person, They were there, they danced around it, but they were never the focal point of the tag team scene. And I think that's probably the best way to put it because they were workers. They still to this day work. They were involved. Brian Knobbs was involved with the David Arquette stuff.
Yeah.
He was, You Can't Kill David Arquette, that whole documentary. He was there. So he's still out there. He trains now, I think. But he was never above that mid-card tag team work. And that was just kind of where he fell, and he made a career doing it. He kept the lights on by being a mid-card tag team champion.
Yeah. I mean, as a kid, I thought they were cool. I'm just like, look at them. I mean, missing teeth and
they were the kind of grungy tag team, like the same light that Mick Foley came into.
Yeah. They were different. I mean, that's the thing. They weren't the Hart Foundation shiny penny looking technicians. They weren't, they weren't the Hollywood Blondes who were these like skilled workers in the ring, but also they're heels because they're telling you they're better than you because they actually are. Like they're nasty, like they're dirty, they're grungy, and they're literally just gonna like kick your ass.
Facts. Okay, the next match on the card, maybe the most technical proof imaginable that Dean Malenko can make everybody look like they can work a match. Because him and Disco, and we talked about it a little bit, and I tried to give him his roses. He's a pretty terrible person, but he had the ability to work a match, and he had one of the longest tenures in WCW of anybody. But when it boils down to it, this match showed you that Dean Malenko could literally wrestle anybody and make it look good. Because from start to finish, it was that story of the babyface, like technical machine going against Disco Inferno, who had a dirty, dastardly way to sneak around every move that Malenko tried to use. And that was the story the whole time. And they told it perfectly. And then at the very end, the double underhook powerbomb into the Texas Cloverleaf, one of the smoothest timing finishes you could work on, the way he hits it, pop, pop, boom, hits, down. And you're like, holy fuck, dude, that Dean Malenko guy can work.
Yeah. I have always loved the Texas Cloverleaf. And it's because of Dean Malenko. To me, like, it I don't know. Like, there's certain moves from WCW that aren't super popular, but like now other people are using them modern day, like the Rings of Saturn, right? Britt Baker uses that and then goes into the mandible claw and everything. But I don't know. It's moves like the Texas Cloverleaf that that's what drew me in to loving. Like I equate a lot of why I like technical wrestlers, which is funny considering that I also love ECW and Blood and Carnage too. But like I'm a big fan of technical wrestling, and it's because of the Dean Malenkos and the Guerreros and that group that is just, I don't know. But yeah, smooth. Man, Malenko is smooth. I mean, if he was taller, he'd be a world champion.
Agreed.
Multiple times over.
I was talking about it last night after Dynamite, how AR Fox moved in the ring. And I'm not saying AR Fox and Dean Malenko are at all in the same ballpark, but the way I described AR Fox was he knew every square inch of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
He knew how to work it to his advantage, and his timing was crisp. He knew without a split second of hesitation what moves he could do from where he was standing and how to pull it off. Dean Malenko was that person in 96. It didn't matter where he was at. He knew he could get a suplex or a hip toss or an arm drag. He could get whatever he needed to out of the weirdest, tightest positionings. Like when they talk about a quarterback in the NFL threading a needle with a pass, that's what Dean Malenko could do with his moves.
That's perfect. That's the perfect analogy. Yeah.
He knew how to fit them in the pocket where he needed to, and he was flawless at it. And he
I
was wrestling Disco Inferno, for crying out loud.
And I love the Iceman character. Look, I don't have to talk. I don't have to have these long-winded promos. I can go in the ring, show that I can literally destroy anybody.
And stretch you to your arms, break like rubber bands, man.
And I'm sorry, the turnbuckle gutbuster to me is still one of the best things ever. Like his top turnbuckle gutbuster, like, oh my God, it's still, I watch it and I'm like, God, this looks painful.
It's one of the best names for a move ever. Yeah. My new favorite finisher name is Eddie Edwards, the Boston Knee Party.
Oh,
where he does like the running high knee thing. Like, I love that name. When I heard that the other night, I was watching Slammiversary and I was like, I forgot that was the name of that finisher.
Yep.
Off the rails as shit, but I love the Boston Knee Party. That's my new current favorite finishing name. Next match was one of those matches that if I hadn't rewatched this pay-per-view, I would have completely forgot it was even on the card. Steve McMichael with Deborah over Joe Gomez. Like, it was kind of
Gomez. I mean, let's elaborate on Joe Gomez for an hour. I mean,
yeah, just really exactly.
Who?
I really have two notes. This was as close to old school Southern wrestling that we really got outside of the Dean Malenko match. This was like a 6-minute like bathroom break match at an indie wrestling show. Old school wrestling, nothing wrong with it. And the tombstone finish. I forgot he used it. Yeah, I forgot the use of the tombstone. That's really my biggest takeaways from this match. It wasn't bad, but it just was like the weirdest. Like, the crowd needed a chance to breathe because we're going into Flair, Giant versus the Four Horsemen, and then the Outsiders match. The last 3 matches of this card were ridiculous. Yeah. So that was like the bathroom break, everybody catch their breath match. Because the very next match after the match that nobody cared about was Flair with Elizabeth and Woman against Conan for the U.S. heavyweight title.
Yeah. Before we get there, so the thing with Mongo and Joe Gomez, this was fresh into Horseman Mongo McMichael. So I mean, they were trying to make him look dominant since you're going into a faction that has a lot of lineage and
But I felt like this could have been a Nitro match. We have 9 matches on this card. Like, this could have been on a Nitro match.
Oh, without a doubt.
There were some of the dark matches that could have been in this place of the card.
You're not wrong.
It just seemed it was the one match that seemed the most useless of the whole card.
People give Mongo McMichael so much shit. And I mean, he wasn't great and everything, but like, I don't know. I was never like one that's like, I hate Steve Mongo McMichaels. And, our thoughts and prayers out to him right now. We know that, he's having super hard time. Like, anytime I see a picture of him, I'm just like, that's not even the same guy.
Yeah.
But I was never one that really it wasn't like I was like, Mongo. Like I wasn't like out here, like wearing a Mongo or wearing a Bears leather jacket or Letterman jacket in support of Mongo McMichael. But I mean, I agree with you. This was the bathroom break match. This was a bunch of stuff's about to happen. Go get in the bathroom, grab yourself a drink. Like it's about to go down.
And you're exactly right. Because then going into the Flair match, one, Flair and Conan isn't one of those matches where you'd be like, I really expected Flair and Conan to tear the house down and blow the roof off of it.
I forgot it happened, but as soon as it announced,
kind of did. Like, this was a match, man. Yeah. And like going back to my old school ways, talking about down to Elizabeth and Woman being the perfect distraction, Conan playing the part of being able to be distracted. You know what I mean? Like the story they told with Flair being Dirty Flair, the ref, like looking the wrong direction at just the right time. Like
she was there a little bit too long. She jumped her cue just a little bit, but I mean, it's live programming, which people, I think with Conan, a lot of people, they're quick to just remember, NWO and Wolfpack Conan, that. But I mean, yeah, he was a U.S. champion, and a good one.
He had a great run, man.
Yeah. And I mean, look who he's defending against. He's defending against Ric Flair. And you better believe if Ric Flair didn't want to work with him, Ric Flair would have been like, no.
Give me a transitional champion. Somebody beat Conan, and then I'll work with this person.
Yeah.
If they wanted to put the belt on Flair, and he wasn't going to be okay with taking it off of Conan, he would have made somebody else win it at a house show so he could beat them on Nitro or at the pay-per-view for it.
Yeah.
Flair giving Conan the rub at this point in '96 was letting everybody know everything that just happened with the Luchadors. This was the motherfucker that made it happen.
Yeah.
Flair going against the biggest, not in size, but the biggest in fame and stature and the person who pretty much booked all the luchadors that came into the country. Flair said, I'm going to work with this guy and make him look really effing good.
Yeah. Yep.
So it was a good U.S. title match. I mean, there was nothing bad about it. Technically speaking, they played the hits. You saw a lot of jaw jacking from Conan. He had a lot of brawling, big punches, the moves. Flair did Flair things. If you go back and watch it, this is outside of the main event for everything that happens in it. This very well could have been the match of the night too.
I would put. Yeah, I'd say the same thing. I'd say the exact same thing.
100%.
Because you get a little bit of everything. You get a little bit of everything in it. I still to this day, watching it, and I was like, I can't, as the match started, I'm like, I don't remember early, pre-NWO Conan, if he does this move, and he does it. I love that rolling clothesline that he does. It was, as a kid, I was like, that's awesome. I don't know. It's just different.
I liked this period. The involvement of Flair with Elizabeth and Woman, and then what we get into with the Taskmaster and Benoit and Arn Anderson, and the fact that this match was the precursor to the tag team match, and then before it we had Steve McMichael in it. So it was all four horsemen back to back, all the way through the booking. It was booked very much like that on purpose, because the horsemen weren't going to open the show because of the luchadors, and they weren't going to close it because of what was about to happen.
Oh, yeah.
So the horsemen positioned themselves on the card to where they were the focal point for everything happening except for the main event.
Yeah.
So I think it was well done with the way they were booking. And you look at Arn Anderson, Chris Benoit, Ric Flair, and Steve McMichael. They weren't bad workers. Giving the McMichaels match flack for being on this pay-per-view,
it makes sense that it's the first of the three.
For sure. If they were going to book all four horsemen on a pay-per-view match, it would make sense to put Mongo's first. I completely agree with that. but I liked the transition through that part of it because you got to see the evolution of all 4 men's stories progress inside of this, an hour of the pay-per-view, really, for these 3 matches, a little over an hour. But so going into it, the semi-main, before we get to it, the Giant, Andre the Giant's son.
I hate when they. I forgot that. Like rewatching WCW, like I forgot that's how they brought him in, and it's still so
Andre
weird.
the Giant's son, DadHat. That's who that is.
Yeah. In his father's singlet.
Yeah. Taskmaster, Kevin Sullivan.
I mean, genius in the ring. I mean,
but he was,
this is Dungeon of Doom era. Like, give me the Taskmaster, give me Kevin Sullivan,
from like the Crockett territories and Mid-South and shit.
And the Taskmaster meant something. Like,
but they were fighting with arguably the 2 most technical men on the card, not named Dean Malenko, and Arn Anderson and Chris Benoit. For what it was in the tag match, it was a good match. There was a lot of hootenanny and shenanigans towards the end of it. They had good involvement with multiple pieces of this puzzle. Woman came out. The Giant looked like a fucking madman. Everybody runs off. Benoit chases down Sullivan, has to get separated. There's so many pieces of the puzzle that happened. People run off backstage at one point. There was so much that was happening. If the Knobs match, the Public Enemy Nasty Boys match hadn't happened, this could have been your train wreck, but somehow they made it make sense.
Yeah.
With the way it happened.
Yeah.
Benoit losing his mind after the match and everything.
Snapping. Which in hindsight feels wrong. It's like, this is uncomfortable now. Especially with what Woman is yelling. I was like,
it's I don't want to say foreshadowing. I'm not saying that at all. I don't want to open up that can of worms.
But
when you see the out,
I was
it was definitely tough.
Yeah. Before the match though, I was watching it while I was trying to get the little one to go to sleep. I was giving him this bottle and I was watching, and my wife is walking in and out, doing stuff, got the older one to bed and everything. And it's just doing the stuff while I'm getting the little one to go to sleep, pretty much around the house. And I was like, I want to see the Big Show. And he was brand new. And so she stuck her head in and she's her face was
holy crap. Look at all that hair.
The hair. And she was he's tiny, because she's always seen him.
Paul White Big Show. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was just yeah. I'm and I was you want to hear a funnier thing? I was I got to find it to show her. I'm he does missile drop kicks off the top rope. And she's excuse me. So, this is, I was, as a kid and back in the day, I was a fan of the Giant. It was, I don't know. It was again, growing up WCW kid, I knew of Andre the Giant, but I didn't live. I was born in 85. So, I don't know.
We were old enough for the body slam and the leg drop at Mania 3.
The stuff that I saw of Andre was on VHS of WrestleMania 3 and things like that. I wasn't seeing him on a regular basis and everything. So I knew of him. So to me, seeing this big Giant, it was cool and it was different. Because seeing Andre at the time that he was hard, not walking around the ring very well, not very smooth. And then seeing this guy who to me looked bigger than Andre doing missile drop kicks and jump it, and that's a WCW ring. So, he jumps over the top rope. He's already on the other side of the ring.
Yeah. Little 16-foot rings, little baby rings.
That's why still to this day, watching Kevin Nash and the Giant, in the ring, it's together. like there's nowhere to move.
The top rope is like at their waist. It
Yeah.
looks like it's ridiculous.
It's like the opposite, like when Rey Mysterio does against the ropes and he does only the bottom two. Like it's that, but for big man. But no, I always liked the Giant. And I mean, this was a cool pairing, like putting Taskmaster and the Giant. I mean, this was a learning opportunity for the Giant being so green. I mean, look who you're opposite with. Your opposite. Take away controversy. Take away all that stuff.
Maybe the greatest in-ring worker of all time.
Yeah. And Arn Anderson, who is up there on that list too.
Agreed.
So, I mean, it big at that time, big learning chance for him. And I'm sure, I mean, the big point of the match is Taskmaster, getting his ass whooped. Part of that is probably so it's like, watch what I can do with these. Like, you're on the outside because, one, it makes sense because they don't want the big man to come in. But this lets the big man outside, who's still green as grass, be able to watch and learn. Like, look, this is how I'm selling against two of probably the best in this company right now in ring. Like, watch how I sell. I mean, you're in a match in front of thousands of people, but you're technically in class right now learning.
No, that's the thing about him going into it. He said it in interviews and shit too, where he was so green that his first match ever was on TV. Yeah. Like, they literally was like, okay, he's 7 foot tall. He's, Andre the Giant's son, go. Yeah. Like, that's all he needed. He had his formal training was almost non-existent. The ultimate example of learning on the fly. Yeah. And there was nobody his size to learn from, really. The whole learn how to be a big man thing. Like, there wasn't anybody his size yet outside of,
and they didn't have really anybody in the company at that time that they could even let him do it with. Yeah. Yeah. Now you look at, okay, Omos is a different example because that man he is just ginormous. Mm-hmm. But I mean, there's big men now, like with the PC, they've said with Omos, like he's literally like being worked with by Undertaker, Kevin Nash. These big men are working with him on how to be a big man.
Yeah.
So.
No, you're absolutely right. And I think he had the perfect people around him. He was always paired against some of the best in the business, whether mind-wise or work-wise or, on the mic or anything. He always around great people. So it never stunted his growth. And he's one of those people. I saw the meme the other day where it said Big Show is a 7-time world champion, a Hall of Famer, and people still say he didn't live up to what he could have been. And it's like, what the fuck do you think he could have been? Like, he had a ridiculous career.
Yeah.
Like,
people just remember the, face heel turns, like back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. You know how many times I can think in my mind more things that happened in Big Show's career than I can say of Andre the Giant's career.
100%.
And yes, I know it's my age. I mean,
as I said, I think it's the age thing, but also because Andre spent so much of his career overseas, Japan, working in France, working on the Canadian Indies. Like, he was over so many places before he got to the U.S. And then even then, Vince McMahon Sr. rented him out like a sideshow to all the territories. By the time Andre made it to big TV in the States, he was already at the twilight of his career.
Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
You want to see prime Andre, go watch him wrestle in '83 when he was the first Westerner to win the G1 in the Madison Square Garden tournament. Because that was what they used to call it before it was the G1. They called it the MSG League.
That's true. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot about that too.
Yeah. Then we get to the main event, man.
But the hostile takeover, which I do love the build of why have we not heard from Eric Bischoff? Why? But which, looking back on it now and watching it, it's one of those things where, like, if this was happening right now and I was my age and we lived in the age that we lived in, I would be calling it from the beginning. We haven't heard from Bischoff. Bischoff is involved in the finish somehow. He's turning, or he's the one that brought him in. And this is all but back then we didn't know this, but they did a good job of, like, we haven't heard from Bischoff. Where is he and everything? And then the whole backstage segments with Mean Gene Okerlund, like, I recognize this voice. It's muffled. I can't understand. I can't just make it out. It just added up to it and everything. But the hostile takeover, and it is just it. I have a weird story about like how I saw this match, the full match for the first time. Because again, it's raised by a single mom. We didn't get a lot of pay-per-views. A lot of times if I was watching pay-per-views, it was written them and it wasn't from Blockbuster, from local independent ones like Movie Max and Cinemax and
Family Video,
Family
Captain
Videos.
Video.
Yeah, stuff like that, which didn't always have the best selection. But we roll into the year of 1998 when to me, we've talked about it, probably one of the best years ever in wrestling, 98, 99. And that's when WCW was really hot, and they released a ton of VHSs. They released the best of Halloween Havoc, the best of the Bash at the Beach, the Superstar series, where they were like interviews and going through the careers of the superstars. And I had almost all of them, including the best of the Bash at the Beach. And that's how I saw this match in full for the first time. And the interview. So, like, I was watching the NWO on Nitro live and everything and loving the NWO without ever seeing the actual formation. So, me watching the formation was 2 years after the fact.
I remember when it happened, but also the same thing. I wasn't renting pay-per-views yet. When I got old enough to start doing chores, like that was what my allowance pretty much was the monthly pay-per-view, because that was what I wanted anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And I would, order a pizza and watch wrestling, and then I would stay up super late and watch the replay, and then I would go to bed at like midnight or 1 o'clock and be a fucking handful the next day because I'd be super tired. But I would always watch it twice because you only got it for 24 hours.
That's true. I forgot about that. Yeah, you did.
So I'd watch it twice, and then I'd wake up in the morning early so I could get ready to go before the bus would run, and I'd watch as much of it before I could before then.
Mm-hmm.
And then I would come home and watch as much of it after school. Like,
I mean,
you could watch it.
Do what like my friends did. I think I'm sure my dad did it too. Like, oops, I hit record on a VHS tape.
Oh, that's how I started. That's the core of how I started tape trading.
Yeah.
Was I would take the tape and I would record the pay-per-view. And then if I had a friend who had other tapes, I would hook up the 2 VCRs in my room, hit play on one and record on the second one, RF out into the other VCR, RF out from the second VCR into your TV to run 2 into 1. I had it down to a science, boy. And I would run videos and make copies, and then I would trade them with the guys at school.
Mm-hmm.
And you could get a box of 4-pack of VHS tapes for like $5.
Yeah.
Like they were like mid-90s dirt cheap. Like being able to get 4 pay-per-views for $5 was a steal.
Yeah.
Because I would buy blank ones just to copy. And this was the start of when I started doing that.
The funny thing is about all that you just said, anybody that is younger is listening to us and we just spoke French to them.
Uh-huh.
Like they have no idea what we're talking about. Which is
running
funny.
coax cables from 2 VCRs.
Yeah. There. Find a VCR.
Glacier's on my TV right now.
The what is?
Glacier.
We can do a Glacier episode one day.
Bash at the Beach is playing on repeat because I rewatched it this afternoon. It's been going since like I started it after dinner when we came upstairs before trivia started. Mortis is in this match too. But we started it again and it was just kind of playing in the background through trivia. And it's gone. I guess I'm into 97 now. It's a weird ass. It's Too Cold Scorpio and a bunch of people. It looks like Mortis, Glacier, like everybody in WCW who's not going to matter in like a year's time. Sure. Anyways, back to the main event of Bash at the Beach of the year we're actually talking about.
96.
Sting gets injured early.
No, Luger.
Or it was Luger. That's right, because the face paint was all weird.
Yeah.
Luger got injured early, got shipped to the back. It's 2 against 2. You see the fight all over the ring, in and out. Hall and Nash are dominating. It seems like they're never going to get the upper hand.
They're doing the old school heel things like the abdominal stretch and let me reach for my partner for that extra leverage and everything, which is funny because like you hear in interviews now, like how like once Hogan joined and they were doing those vignettes and how they wanted it to be real and not this, the wrestling. But yet they're in the ring doing the wrestling thing.
Doing some fucking wrestling moves if I've ever seen it.
Yeah, like heel wrestling. So that's one of those things I'm just like, it doesn't add up. But but yeah, it was, and it was a lot of Hall, because Hall, I mean, if you're gonna showcase these two and make them look dominant, you're gonna put Hall in, not Nash, like, because Hall was the worker of the two.
100%. One of the greatest to never win a world title.
Absolutely.
We spent a lot of time talking about that on that episode. We also talked about how, looking back on it, how rushed this kind of felt, because the amount of short of time from when they showed up to when it happened, it was what, 4 weeks is what we said, 5 weeks.
Yeah,
it was a
not
short
5 weeks. It was a short build up.
Yeah, super short. And we said that this could have been built for months if they really wanted to do it.
Yeah, and tease every, like, 1, 2, 3 could show up. Don't break my heart. Like so many teasers that they could throw out. Like we said that in that Hall and Nash episode. Like they literally could have dropped, close hints to names of WWF people, and you would have no idea.
The biggest hang up for me in the whole thing is something we've talked about before, and I'm pretty sure it's Tony Schiavone. And he gives the whole, like, is he the third man?
Heenan.
Is it Heenan? Okay.
What side is he on?
Yeah, what side is he on?
Yeah, it's
like,
Heenan.
Come on, dude. Really?
Yeah.
Like, really?
Yep.
Really? Like, that was my biggest takeaway, is Heenan ruined it for everybody. Very reminiscent of Schiavone. It was Schiavone the night Foley won it, when it was like, oh, that'll put butts in seats. Like, shut up, old guy. And
that's coming from for me, guy. It's like, it's just, that's another thing, like, Heenan. Like, I'm just like, dude, I don't know.
I love you, but you're kind of a cringy old man at this point, bro.
Looking back on it, yeah. Yeah, looking back on it.
His commentary did not age well. Like I said, it's like Lawler. Like, there's a 50-50 chance it's going to make you cringe when you listen to him do commentary. Yeah. And rewatching so much of this WCW, I felt like I've rewatched so much of my childhood in the last 3 months because of this podcast, that I'm like, I forgot about so much of this stuff.
Yeah.
So the big heel turn, and we've talked about managers and we've talked about all kinds of stuff in this. We haven't talked about, is this the biggest heel turn in wrestling history? Just call it what it is. Do you think this was it? Is this the biggest one?
Yeah. Still to this day.
Is it one of the most like, you hear all this stuff, the most polarizing moment in wrestling? Has there been anything since that shook the foundation of the sport more than this?
Well, see, it's weird for me because, like, we get Hogan as a heel and we get him in all black, but people forget, like, a year prior to this, he had this, like, identity crisis, and he was coming out in the same all black, but he wasn't technically a heel. He was just, he was having an identity crisis. It's because the fans were booing him and everything.
It was like the Cena syndrome, where people were so tired of it, they booed him because they were tired of the fucking eat your vitamins, say your prayers.
I will die on this hill. Roman Reigns is real close to that edge, tipping over, being on that edge. Like, we're real close to people booing Roman Reigns out of the arenas again, because it's starting to get shoved down our throat. Like,
I've been saying that for a while, that they can go to the well one too many times if they're not careful, and if they do, they will screw themselves over.
It is time to start wrapping that storyline up.
And I don't think they have 9 months left in them to get back to WrestleMania.
No, I don't either.
And I don't want to see them deteriorate one of the best stories, maybe the best story in wrestling since the formation of the NWO.
Yeah, like after Jay, I don't know where it goes. Like, I just don't. But I digress. Yeah, I mean, in the moment, I mean, it does make sense. I mean, he was the person that helped build where Hall and Nash came from. It made total sense.
What if it was Sting? Do you think the NWO would have gotten over the way they did? It would have been as big. They would have talked about how revolutionary of a moment it was. Biggest heel turn in wrestling. If Surfer Sting came out in black then?
Oh, he wasn't necessarily Surfer Sting yet. Still, he had the dark hair, but he was still bright, colorful paint and gear because he had let his natural hair come out. But I don't know because like for me, I have to think about like Sting as a heel, and Sting as a heel to me always looked like he was overacting.
I
Like it
always
was
go to Joker Sting and Impact when I think of heel Sting, and he really was. He was that tweener then, but that's what I think of is like crazy Joker Sting is who I always think about.
speaking of that, on YouTube here, the Impact Wrestling channel, they keep doing these cool like history of, and they're like 2 hour long things. They did one on the Main Event Mafia. It's like a 2 hour special. They just released the other night, 2 hour special, the history of Joker Sting. And it's all everything
That he did
Joker Sting in Impact.
because he
Which is
came
cool.
out. That was against Hogan, right? Wasn't Hogan involved in that whole
Yeah, he was
storyline?
like, he was like the GM or like
Yeah.
the co-owner. And Mr. Anderson, Ken Anderson was involved in it and stuff like that. But
Yeah.
I don't know. Like Sting, even the Sting as a heel in WCW, like when we talked about Bret Hart, in that tournament where he won the world title, Sting was a heel at that time. He had been stripped of the title. That's how the whole tournament came about. Sting as a heel to me just never worked. So I don't know. But I mean, if you listen to interviews from Hall and Nash, they said like when Sting was pitched, if Hogan doesn't do it, they were like, Sting, that's not going to work. To me, I think that maybe it depends on how it was presented, but if he came out and he's like, look, I built this company, like the modern day WCW, the torch was passed to me from Ric Flair, and then I got forgotten about when Hulkamania
Showed
came
up
to
on our
this
door.
company. Came to this company from another company. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna tear down the house that I built myself by bringing in two others. It could have been a kind of like what Vince McMahon did when they brought the NWO to WWF. Like I'm gonna inject my own creation with a lethal dose of poison. It's kind of like that. Like that going that route, I think it would work with Sting, but nowhere does it have the impact. And we're talking about it, or I mean, I don't think we would see NWO T-shirts at every con, every event that you look into. No matter where you are, there's going to be one NWO shirt somewhere in an arena.
Every wrestling show I've ever been to, I've seen at least one NWO shirt.
Yeah.
That's how you know how influential this was to wrestling.
Yeah.
Is because you see a shirt of every wrestling show you go to for the group that happened because of this main event.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think, more important than the match, it's the interview afterwards. It's the
standing
promo.
in the ring and everything, pelting them and the bottles and the cans and everything.
And Hogan going full heel, like telling fans to stick it to he looks.
We're here to change
angry.
everything. This is the new order of wrestling, brother.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think we're in agreement. It's the biggest heel turn in wrestling. It was a huge, two really great matches overall. Like the last match, not great in a sense of technical work and sportsmanship, but good in a sense of what it did for wrestling. The Malenko match was phenomenal. The Flair Conan match was phenomenal.
Yeah.
Lots of great matches, for it to be a long card, 9 matches overall. Like, what would you give it grade wise? Like, would you give it a rating?
7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. So like a
maybe
C?
6.
6 out of 10.
Yeah, 6 or 7 out of 10.
I would say like that 7 to 7.5 range. Like good, not great. I would say 8 or above is great.
Yeah.
So it's like good, not great, but definitely more good than bad.
Wait, let's rank it. I'm gonna steal something from our own channel from another show, from PWN Reacts with Mr. B-Roll on here. How many Shockmaster helmets do you give it?
Out of 5?
Yeah.
3?
I'd say 3.
Yeah.
So
half of 5 is 2.5, so just a little bit over medium.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
The storyline's what drove it. The storyline of these two and who the third man was is what made people buy that pay-per-view.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
Yep.
This is This pay-per-view was 145 degrees in the middle. It was medium well, not well done.
Spoken like the chef that you are.
I don't know why I've never used that analogy before until just now. It just came to me.
That's
I was like,
t-shirt.
this is, yeah. Uh-huh. It was medium well. It wasn't well done, that's for sure.
Yep. I like it. I like it.
So that's it, man. That's Bash at the Beach.
Yeah.
Perfect hour. We hit our times better than most wrestlers do, my dude.
Right. Well, then I get to go on my long spiel of all the promoting and stuff and everything. But yeah, before we get to that, Will, what's going on with Rivet City Radio and Botch Spots and Chair Shots?
We've got tons of stuff coming up. We've got all the new shows. If you check my link in my bio at The Will Gray, you'll find all of our shenanigans. We've got shows going 7 days a week now. I finally started picking up my interviews again. I finally got the wheels on the bus going round and round enough that I'm going to be able to take a step back again. I've pounded some interviews. Me and DadHat have a great one the first week of August. I've got the Duke of Hardcore, John Wayne Murdoch. I've got Stunt Marshall from CCW. Like, I've got some great interviews lined up for August. Some good stuff on the back end. I've got Alex Kane coming back. Like, tons of cool interview work coming from Botch Spots.
Yeah. Rivet City Radio. If you do not follow them here on YouTube or Twitch or everywhere that they are, go follow them, please. We might be our own separate channel, but I like to think of us as like the little redheaded stepchild or the next door neighbor friend that jumps in with them and they humor us being around. But I love working with Will doing the show every week. And I'm always there to support you guys with Rivet City and Botch Spots anytime you guys need me or want me or, throw something at me like, hey, you're free. I will always try to make myself available. But they do such good stuff over there. But like most things in wrestling, I'm going to steal some of Will's gimmicks real quick. Go follow our friends. Go follow Self Bet Wrestling, Bree.Stout, which I think she just changed her name to Tribal Queen Bree. I don't know exactly, but Bree.Stout, it should still come up. The Ginger Ninja, a.k.a. all of the Wrestle Talk Wolfpack. We're about to celebrate our 1 year anniversary for our podcast on Wednesday. We've got some cool stuff to announce, some cool stuff that we're going to do to celebrate. Sam Stackhouse is going to join us. He was our very first guest on episode 1.
Sam Stackhouse.
And he's going to come, and I'm pretty sure to be with us the entire show, which is going to be kind of cool.
That'll be fun.
Yeah. Also follow all of our friends that one, she's not here, but I'm going to shout out Allison, Just a Girl 918. Yep. AKA the Boss Bitch and Boss Bitch Trivia over on Rivet City Radio, Botch Spots Chair Shots. Mr. B-Roll, XLJ the OG, AKA Cole TV, J Knows Wrestling, Best Gout Machine, AKA Best Gout Foundation. So many more that I could shout out and everything that support, and the Husky Roads, Silverback Nate Slater, and there's even more, but I'm not going to shout them out yet because that's going to spoil some stuff that we have coming down the line here. Will and I have to figure out when we can do this 1 year celebratory live because I got secrets and I want to tell them. Like,
we'll make it happen in the next 7 business days. Guaranteed there will be some time.
I've got collaborations I want to announce, and I ain't good at keeping secrets, so I'm like that. But before we get to even more business, Will, plug your subathon.
My subathon this coming Sunday, which is the 30th. We start a Rivet City Radio subathon. What we're going to do is we're going to stream for a continuous amount. I started it with 24 hours and said people can add time to it by subbing. If you go to the Botch Spots and Chair Shots Rivet City Radio Twitch, you'll see the list of how you can add time and what to do and donating and tipping and all of that fun stuff. We're up to about 28 consecutive hours. We're going to be running from 7 p.m. on Sunday night through Monday night at 11 p.m. You can add, I think, where there's another 18 hours that can be added to add up to 48 total hours for what we're going to do here. So head over to Rivet City Radio, check it out. It's to help promote a good cause for the network. It helps us grow. It helps get new gear, some great interviews, all kinds of fun stuff to help the network grow. We appreciate all the help.
We're going to try to see if we can do something maybe WCW related at some point on it and everything. But if for some reason we can't, I'm going to be in that chat a lot. Wanting to keep Will awake. But yeah, as always, I am your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan. You can find me at DadHat Wrestling on everything. You can find us here at World Championship Wreckage at WC Wreckage Pod on Twitter. We are now on Threads. We are WC Wreckage, no, World_Championship_Wreckage at Instagram, which I guess would be Threads as well now. And yeah, TikTok. So as always, we have to do a poll, and I'm a little torn this week because I had what I thought I was going to choose, and then we brought up something in conversation, which makes me, I'm like, do I do that instead? So I have a watch along option, or I have like a career kind of retrospective looking at option. So I'm trying to figure out what I want to do.
You want me to go first?
Sure.
Ultimo Dragon.
Ooh.
I want to talk about how the Ultimo Dragon kicked down the forbidden door by winning 9 junior heavyweight championships simultaneously, which included him winning the WWF light heavyweight title as well as the WCW cruiserweight title at the same time in the Octuple J Cup championship in New Japan, and how he brought the WWF title to WCW.
Well, I can't do my watch along because I got to at least put some type of fight into the ring against that. Because that'd be a good one too. That'd be a really good one too. All right, well, now I'll do my career retrospective. I want to talk about one of my favorite people of all times. One of my there's Sting and Randy Savage, and probably this person is number 3 of my all time. I want to talk about Scott fucking Hall.
Ooh, that's a great pick.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. If I had to pick between those two, I wouldn't know which one to pick, because the Ultimo Dragon's a cool story. Because a lot of people don't realize how he wrestled for Michinoku Pro Wrestling and WCW and WWF, and this man was wrestling all over the world, somehow finding the little gray loopholes. But we'll get there. Can't tease it.
I'm curious to see where this poll goes. Like, this might be one of those polls. I could be totally wrong, where it's like
50-50 the whole time.
Like back and forth, like leader wise and everything. So yeah, I'm curious about that. We have on our current one, let me just double check the time real quick. I'm holding on to that watch along because there's a watch along I want to do because it's just an interesting conversation. So next time you throw out a watch along, I've got a watch along to go with it. So for our current one, Raven or Dean Malenko, which either one I am totally down for. I mean, I think that we would just, if it's Dean Malenko, we're just going to be giving roses to him for an hour, talking about how good he is. We have 1 day, 9 hours left. So a little bit over 24 hours. And right now, just on Twitter, Raven is beating Dean Malenko 66% to 34%. But there's also votes on TikTok and Instagram. So we shall see here in a little bit of little bit more than 24 hours which one of those happen. But yeah, I think that's all the damage that we can do tonight, Will.
Easiest hour of my life every week, Bubba. I love the shit out of you, man.
I do too, man. Every week I get to talk to you. It's just fun. It's like my wife just keeps joking. She's like, tell Will hi. So, like, she's like, I'll see. She's like, I know you're saying you're only gonna go record an hour. We'll see how long you take. And I'm like, it's WCW. I can talk about it forever. So.
We always start out too like, oh, this could only be a 30-minute episode, 45 minutes, and we always always hit the hour mark, no matter what we're talking. We talked about Disco Inferno for 60 minutes, DadHat.
I'm gonna, for the watch along, I'm gonna pay just to make you watch Disco Inferno.
You're gonna sub on Patreon just so you can be like, I want you to watch 30 minutes of Disco Inferno matches.
Yep. And I want you to give him all the roses while you're watching them.
You're only allowed to say nice things about Disco Inferno for an hour.
Dance puppet, dance. Well, folks, as we do each and every week, we got to leave you with some wise words, and they come from the one and only American Dream, Dusty Rhodes himself, baby. Have a good night.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.